So is this just an attempt to like work your way back from the darkness of the show we're watching right now? Is that what we're doing here?
I'm offsetting the paranormal experience I just had in my living room while I was making notes for the show. My TV did a thing that it has never done before, ever, which is turn itself on.
Oh, it turned it on. I thought it turned it off.
No, it turned itself on.
I misunderstood your message.
And the show that was on the television was a house remodeling show.
Oh.
Which is what this book is about, in a way. Or this show, I mean.
Matt, don't you want to have your forever house? Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast examining Mike Flanagan's open casket as we discuss his work. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me with his brand new litter of kittens, it's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt? How are those cats doing?
I fixed them.
Oh God, Matt.
They're perfect.
What have you done? This is terrible. Oh, don't do that. I don't like that. I
know.
No. For those just listening to the audio, he just looked very creepily at the camera and held up a dead cat.
Yep.
That he just had in his room somewhere.
I just have them. I have them around the house. Yeah.
This week on the show, we are continuing our journey through Mike Flanagan's 10-part series, The Haunting of Hill House. It is episode 2, Open Casket. And Matt, it's the Shirley episode. We're done with Steve now. We're on to Shirley, and Shirley's my new best friend. What did you think of this episode?
This is a great episode. Man, this is just what you want out of an episode of television. The storytelling is perfect. The character dynamics and the psychology of it, really, I think, is the thing I'm going to mention 10,000 times. Yeah. This is kind of, I've said many times over the years, like one of my favorite things, maybe my favorite thing about stories is, psychology, like exploring psychology, nailing the contours of the human psyche to the page or to film, if you will. And this episode just blew me away in that regard.
Yeah, I am so in love with this episode of TV. Like, we talked for 2 hours last week about episode 1, so it's not like I didn't like that episode. I really, really enjoyed that episode, but I think we did mention that one of the things that episode has to do is be a pilot on top of being a good episode of TV. And this episode doesn't have to be a pilot. It gets to just be an episode of TV, and it is so good. I absolutely loved it. Yeah, I mean, like, it's really interesting because episode 1, I watched that and I was like, yeah, this is really good TV, but it's not the reason I love the show. And episode 2, my reaction was like, holy shit, this is why I love the show, but I did not expect that going in. Like, I expected to have that reaction on episodes still to come of like, yes, this is why I love the show. But this episode is so good. It's like the writing, the structure, the filmmaking, everything, the performances, everything is clicking. Yeah, I mean, this is like, you kind of wonder from like a filmmaking perspective. You get to this episode and you're like, oh yeah, we've got this now. Like there's nervous with the pilot and everything you have to do with the pilot, and then you get into the zone with this episode, and it's like, yeah, we've got it. I think the first 3 episodes were shot as part of the same shoot, so they probably didn't realize that like actually in production, but you wonder if like in the edit after the fact, if like they're putting episode 2 together and they're like, oh, that we're singing now, like this is doing everything we wanted it to do, and it's working on every single level. And yeah, you talked about the psychology of it. I love it. I love it so much. We have so much to talk about with what's going on with Shirley and how the show communicates this and complicates this and really dissects into her views on death and the idea of death in general. And also I think the concept of an open casket, like that's the title of this episode. And it's something that I want to get into. It's something that the show kind of demands you think about, because it's this very interesting tradition that us human beings have.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we planted the seed of the open casket last episode.
Yeah.
The idea of it, and now this whole episode, like you said, focuses on that. And I've never thought about the concept of an open casket as much as I have during this episode. I have been to funerals with open caskets before, and
Yeah.
honestly, my reaction in the past has probably been something like, okay, this is something that I guess is important to people, but I'm going to kind of avoid engaging with it in any way and then not think about it any further because it's upsetting to me.
Yeah.
Which is itself interesting because it's a sort of the reaction is to just close off and not think about that thing at all. And
Yeah.
there's not that many things in life that you have that reaction to.
Yeah. I mean, I have one half of my family is very Italian and very Catholic. And so every funeral I've been to with members of those families, they've all been open casket. We've had the wake before the funeral. I do not think that is a decision I will be making for myself when the time comes to open my casket for people to look at me. I find the like conceptually and factually the concept of embalming is incredibly disturbing to me. And I think we'll get into all the reasons why and as we go through this episode and Shirley's kind of obsession with the embalming process. It's really weird to me. It's really weird. Yeah. I mean, I do have very, like you said, you went to these open casket funerals and you never thought about it again. I think about it all the time. I've been to both my grandparents on my mother's side. I have very clear memories of seeing them. And my grandmother died when I was young. I was a kid. I was probably, I can't remember exactly how old I was, probably 9 or 10. My grandfather died when I was 16. And I have very, very, very clear memories of their funerals, their wakes, and the open casket, and that entire experience.
Yeah, it might be more accurate to say that I avoid thinking about it than it would be to say that I never think about it. It's just because it is upsetting. I think one thing, and since we're having this conversation anyway, I think it's an interesting way to open this episode, actually. The main one that I do remember was, a close relative who I just did not think they did a good job on the, I guess the whole process. Like it just didn't look like her. It looked uncanny. Nothing about it was right, really. It was just, and that was kind of not like traumatizing, but like there was kind of a subtle horror to this idea of like, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
This is worse actually than just not seeing her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because like either you are a religious person and believe in the concept of the soul, you're a spiritual person. And in that case, the soul is not there anymore, right? The person has died. The soul has moved on to wherever souls go when they die. Or you are not a religious person and therefore the person no longer exists. That was them, but it's not them anymore. So it's like it's in my mind either way either way you structure your belief system, like it seems it's an uncomfortable process. And I don't want to, like, to be clear here, like I think there's a lot of people that get a lot of value and closure out of the same thing that Shirley echoes in this episode of like I think what she says to Max, the young boy at the very beginning of the episode, is like, you have all these images of your grandmother with no teeth, with no hair, just like a lot of the natural parts of getting sick and dying. I am going to fix her up in a way that gives you one final clear image of who this person was, and it will be an image that we can control. It will be sanitized. It will be perfect. It will allow you to have a picture of someone that is clear and beautiful to match your memories of that person. And I respect the desire to have that thing. I do think the show does a very interesting thing with that, which is I think say, hey, maybe that's not healthy, actually, Shirley.
Yeah, I have this intrusive mental image of Deadpool with the paper cutout of is it Hugh Jackman over his face. and it's just like, yeah, it's kind of, it's a can you really fool yourself if you know you're fooling yourself? I don't know. Again, that sounds really judgmental. I think there's probably a positive psychological function that is served by this ritual, like you just said. But also, it seems sort of volatile. Like okay. Should we just jump into talking about the episode specifically? Because
were we not doing? I thought we were doing that.
I guess we were. I just I'm thinking about, there's a very clear structure, right? There's a very and this is one of the really great things that Flanagan's doing with flashbacks, where he's stitching us together, moving through time, but it's totally seamless, and one moment leads into the next. You're never lost. Everything is very well connected on a narrative and emotion level, and you kind of understand. The way I was thinking about this is like, this is for Shirley, you're sort of following the story of this, day following her sister's death from inside Shirley's head.
Yeah.
And for Shirley, it's not that she literally has a 15-minute flashback to the past, but for Shirley, even a mundane moment, seeing her sister's body, is inextricably stitched together with this past event that happened with the kittens.
Yeah.
And this is what she's as much dwelling in that moment with the kittens as she's dwelling in the moment with her sister's body. Yeah. And it's almost like we all kind of experience this, even though we don't usually talk about it. Like, we don't all quite live in the present, right? We live in another state between the present and whatever memories and feelings this moment is conjuring up from the past. Especially true in a really terrible situation like what Shirley's experiencing.
Yeah, almost as if like we kind of tend to look at time as this linear concept, because we think we experience time in like a cause effect thing, but we're constantly living in every moment that's led us to what we call the present, right? So like we're not thinking about them in like head movies that we flash back to in those moments, yes, but like we are living in them, we are a product of them, and we are reliving them. So yeah, I think you're right there. Yeah,
I like how you said that. So the structure that I was gonna point at is just like we sort of get a 3-beat. It's not quite a 3-beat. It's maybe it will be a 3-beat when the next episode rolls around. I'm not really sure. Maybe we can revisit this. But the first beat, I guess, is her parents sort of persuade her that, hey, we're going to have a funeral for the cats, and this is going to be a healing ritual. This is essentially a ritual that we're doing so that you can feel okay about this.
Yeah.
Much the same speech that she gives to the boy, Max, later.
Yep.
And she's skeptical, and then she goes along with it. And then the interesting kind of curveball that the show throws you is, at first it seems like this is great, and she's sort of like less sad because it's like she's getting a handle on the situation. Yeah. And then the horrifying thing with the bug mouth happens.
Hey Matt, do you think if you were like a small child and like you were holding the corpse of a dead kitten and a bug crawled out of its mouth, do you think you'd have a warped depiction of death in your head?
I think I might. I think I very well might.
Yeah, a little bit.
Is it short? Is it after that point that all the other cats die too, or that the dad has to take them to a farm upstate?
It is like the next day.
Okay,
yeah. Yeah.
Which I think we both enjoyed the parents having that conversation that ends with what was it? Not our finest hour, no doubt. And then
no doubt
the scene just ends.
Yeah.
I burst out laughing because I feel like I've had that conversation before.
I do really want to dive into that whole conversation because I think that is laying some groundwork for the Hugh and Olivia relationship, but we can save that for later because I like the role you're on with this recurring beat of the cat open casket funeral, which by the way, she insists to open the casket there, right? Like this is not something her mom and dad said. Her mom and dad did not distill upon her this idea of you should really look at the body of this dead kitten. She wanted to do that. She insisted. Right. It is though after her mother dies,
right.
her father's insistence that she go up and see the open casket there. And then of course she pays that forward to young Max, who does not want to see his dead grandmother. I guess one thing I will say just generally the problem I have with some of the character decisions in this show is I think if a young child doesn't want to see the corpse of their loved one, like that should be a thing where you go, okay, that's okay. It should not be like, no, you're going to regret it if you don't. Here, I'm going to pull you up there. Maybe I won't regret it. Like if I was very uncomfortable with seeing my grandmother that last time embalmed in a casket, like would I still think about the fact that I didn't do that today? I mean, maybe it's certainly possible, but I don't know. I don't think we should force a child into that uncomfortable situation if they don't want to be in it.
I totally agree, but I think the show is very much playing with this idea because like distinctly, so I mean, you basically just hit all the beats, and that's all I kind of wanted to say is like, okay, so it's a horrifying, disturbing, and traumatizing experience when she buries the cat. She doesn't want to see her mom because my understanding is like, number one, it's her mom's dead body, like she wouldn't want to see that, of course, but then also subtextually, it's like she just had this horrifying experience circling around the idea of burying the dead. Yeah. And then she gets to see her mom, and it's actually this profoundly healing experience for her. And it's almost like, you know, there's an inception moment that you can kind of see happen where she's like, oh, I can get my hands around this. I can get some feeling of control that the intrinsic horror of death can be controlled. I can do something about these horrible feelings, and
I can fix it. Yeah,
I can fix it. I can fix the way that I feel about this. Is I think what's really happening on a psychological level. And so one interesting thing is like you, I think you were pointing out, the guy, I guess it's the funeral director, when she's a kid, kind of physically pulls her, grabs her and pulls her. It kind of doesn't leave her an out. And now she is recapitulating this act on this kid where she's like, I'm not taking no for an answer. Yeah. You are going to have this moment because for me, this was an incredibly powerfully healing and positive moment. And for her, this is like an article of faith. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing the show is doing, or maybe we'll see what happens, but it's like, it doesn't always go that way. And you know, maybe we haven't seen what happens with Max and his grandma yet. I'm wondering if that's going to be some kind of final concluding beat to this thing, right? Where it's not what she thought it was going to be. You know,
it might not. I mean, like Max has been pretty insistent that he's seeing his grandmother's ghost sitting by his bed every night. And this is the type of story where that could just be an actual thing that's happening. Yeah, right. Maybe not. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of this as a healing moment. I think I agree with you. I think in her mind, this has been this kind of moment in her development that defines her entire life, because she goes into this very thing. She becomes a mortician. She fixes people. That's what she does. She echoes his line exactly that he tells her when she says, you fixed her. And the mortician says, that's what I do. And she echoes that exact line. But like the way she describes it to the kid is so interesting. Like, again, the idea of it's a great chance to take all those pictures, those bad pictures, and cover it all up with a better picture, right? Like that is very specific charged language that our show is throwing that way. It is the idea of throwing a shroud over something, or as you said, Deadpool stapling the picture of Hugh Jackman to his face. It is not reality. That like, it is not reality in any way. That not only is that body not alive anymore, but through the embalming process, that body has ceased to be any sort of recognizable tissue. It is fluids that have been pumped into it and it is makeup that has been heavily caked on it, and that's all it is. And it is like, I think one thing, jumping ahead a little bit, when she is doing the same thing for Nell, and I don't know, maybe you disagree with me or not, we haven't got a lot of clear images of Nell in the show so far, but I don't think the fixed Nell like super looked like Nell from what we've seen in the story. Like, I mean, she wasn't like unrecognizable. It's clearly like the actress, but I just feel like she didn't match the picture very well. And I'm not saying like the point of this is actually Shirley is terrible at her job. No, it's just like, it's always going to be approximation. It's always going to be a version of a person, not the real person, essentially.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I think if I were to say what I think they're going for there is like, she's doing her best, but you can never quite make a dead face that has been, sorry to be graphic, peeled off and then put back on.
Yeah.
Look right again. I think that's kind of what the show is going for. Like it's a really good job, but it's never going to be perfect. Is how I would say it.
Yeah, and the idea of like, the other thing she says is like, not only I'm going to fix her, once she's fixed, she'll be fixed forever, right? Like we'll pump these embalming fluids in her, and then this halts the decay process. She will be fixed forever. And the concept of forever is, I think, another specific theme and recurring incident in this episode, because we get also another instance of the forever house mentioned. You know, we talked about a little last week. It was only mentioned in a deleted scene from the first episode, but in this one we get to see Shirley interact with her mother as she is working on the forever house, designing the forever house. And I think the concept of a forever house is really interesting, because we get both this understanding of like, once we move into this house, we're not going to live in any other houses anymore. And that's it. We've achieved our house. We're done. This is our home. It's here. And then we also very specifically compare a house to a person's body, right? You know, like this is the saying that Liv Crain has, is that like a house has eyes, it has a face, and the whole purpose of it all is to keep everything inside of it safe forever. It's like, well, bodies don't live forever, actually. And like, so it's just like really interesting kind of contradictory images we're summoning here as we make these comparisons. And again, I think the show is inviting us to make these comparisons as we cut from Shirley talking about fixing forever to a scene where young Shirley is talking to her mom about the forever house. I think we're being asked to draw these connections, and this is, you know, you talked about the structure of the episode and how we move through these flashbacks. This is one of the things that I think is just absolutely incredible, that the show teaches us how to follow these cuts in time, essentially. Almost every single one of them is a match cut. So we're cutting from something in the present to a similar version of that thing in the past. You know, it's Shirley is writing on the death certificate for the person, and then we cut to Shirley writing a checkbook. You know, young Shirley sees the mask that was covered in the wasp nest, and we cut from there to the mask she's bought for her son in the present. We do this again and again and again throughout the episode, and not only does that allow for this feeling of continuity between scenes, I think it helps kind of crystallize the ways in which the flashbacks are narratively connecting to the things that are happening, because you're like paying more attention and seeing the physical connection, so you can pay attention to the thematic connection of them. And it's really just great stuff, in my opinion.
I agree. You said like 17 different things in there that I wanted to hit on, so I'm
sorry.
Gonna have to pick my targets. I guess I just want to say, like, we're doing something really interesting with her and her son, right? With the mask, and like, I don't know what exactly yet. That was one thing that jumped out to me as like, okay, there's a lot of latent tension in this household, in this situation. Nothing more to say really, other than just like that was something that stood out to me about the episode. Like, I think setting something up for later, really.
Yeah, well, and let's be clear, like, Shirley is, of the Crain children, as far as we know, the only one with children of her own. So in the story about, you know, childhood trauma and your parents and the complicated relationship with all that, it does, I think, like cause you to straighten up a little bit when one of the characters has children of their own. And yeah, we're taking some time to kind of outline the conflict in that relationship.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I felt like it was very obvious that Shirley was in the wrong because the kid is just like, I would like to have this specific Halloween costume, please. And she's like, here's a paper mask, color it with markers. And it's like, that's the lamest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
No, even the lamest kid at my school would not have done that. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's just like you do it, like, and it's like she kind of the lecturing speech of like you'll appreciate this so much more if you get to build it yourself. Which is again, I think another thing she kind of gets from her mom, and the concept of like we learned that the Crain parents, we knew that they were house flippers after the first episode, right? But we didn't know that it seems like she is a designer. She designs houses, and he is in construction. He builds houses, and this is what they do. So it's like that fixer upper team, right?
Yeah,
the ones that live in Waco, Chip and Joe. Yeah, they're Chip and Joe.
Yeah.
And so like this idea of it's worth more, it's more valuable, it's more meaningful to you if you've made it yourself. But she's really not giving him the tools or the ability to do any of that. Like Daredevil is he's like a dude who wears like a skin tight like leather with this particular mask, and like you can't, like, I've not given you any of the tools to actually make a Daredevil costume. Like I've just given you a white mask. Like the most you could do is paint it red and then be like, yeah, I'm Daredevil.
I think that, if anything, underlined the total disconnection and disinterest she has in her son's existence, because you say, so you know who Daredevil is. And she obviously doesn't. Not only does she not know who Daredevil is, she doesn't care to ask.
Yeah.
Any info. She just says like your Devil Man costume, and she just assumes it's like a devil, a generic devil. If you quizzed her, she would not know it was a Marvel superhero whose power is that he's blind but has enhanced senses, etc. Like, and so you're left feeling like this is not actually some kind of righteous and principled stand that my son should make his own Halloween costume because it'll be better for him. This is actually just a thin veneer covering her total disinterest and lack of desire to engage.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being too harsh, but I like her whole tone and affect toward him felt very dismissive, and he seemed so frustrated in a way that, to me, I felt like the language of the show was telling me like his frustration is very much justified.
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't like get immediately defensive of like the depiction of she entirely dismissive. But I think there's definitely that there. I mean, we do have the scene near the end of the episode when she is working on Nell and the kids kind of come downstairs in the area they're not supposed to, and she has this conversation with them. Like you definitely see in her a reaction to the experience she had with her mother around like the first instance of death, and conversations around what does this mean, and the fact that her mother lied to her definitely in the original conversation definitely had an impact on her, because like she's very adamant about like, ask me any questions, I will tell you anything honestly, I will tell you exactly what's going on, I will later tell you exactly what I'm doing to her, I will go through all of this in detail, but this part is not meant for you to be seen. So like, I mean, there was part of me that's like very sympathetic to that idea, and that's like I think that conversation with her kids, maybe you disagree with me, I think that conversation with her kids goes rather well, actually. Although I do wonder if like they live in a mortuary and a funeral home, so like is this really the first time she's talked to those children about death? I mean, certainly it's a different story when it's a loved one that has died versus random people that come into the place every day. But it feels like the children of a mortician would have to get a much earlier grasp on death than a regular child.
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible they just haven't really been curious because it's just sort of the water they swim in. But
yeah, and by the way, this isn't like a critique of the show and the choices of the show. I think it's interesting like from a what are we trying to say here, and what are we saying about how involved Shirley is in the lives of her children.
Yeah, no, it could just be the case that she just doesn't talk to them much about this because she doesn't talk to them much about anything.
Yeah.
So I, interesting, because I agree with what you just said. Like, my own personal opinion is that, like, yeah, she handled that well. That's probably close to the approach that I would like to think that I would take in a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I think the show is playing in is the idea of traumas either being like recapitulated onto the next generation, or in many cases sort of like I'm picturing like a clock pendulum where it's like, okay, well, my mom did this thing and I didn't like that, so we're going to do this thing on the other side. And it's just, okay, you're just screwing your kids up in a different, new and interesting way. And I'm not necessarily coming down hard on Shirley here, because I did just say that I like agree with her take, but her whole life seems to have been such a like rejection of, the attitude her mom seemed to be expressing, that I think maybe it goes too far. It goes too far in the direction of sort of trying. It's definitely pathological. Okay, let's talk about this. It's definitely pathological, the idea that she has to be the one to embalm her sister.
Yeah, that's fucking insane. And I'm glad like every character in the show goes like, Shirl, that's nuts.
Yeah, like they borderline are gonna like keep her from doing it, and it's just clear that it's like, you are not going to keep me from doing it.
Yeah.
And this is part of her thing. Like, she needs to do this.
She has to.
She has to. This is part of her getting control, getting that feeling of control, and being able to, like you said a second ago, cover up the bad pictures with pretty pictures. It's a ritual for her, and it's part of her grieving process, really. But that doesn't mean it's good. It seems very bad, actually.
Yeah, like even when she's like cavalier with Steve on the phone about like, I'm talking to you right now and I'm up to my elbows in my sister's organs. I'm like, yeah, Shirley, that's right.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Right.
There's infinity other people out there that could be doing this for you. But yeah, I mean, one thing that I love about what the episode does is by the end of it, you just totally understand completely why it had to be her. Like why there was no other option in her mind. Well, like it's still, I think you said this to me when we were talking earlier this week. It's still insane. It's still insane that she's insisting on doing this. Like it's not like the show makes you go like, oh yeah, I get it now. You're good. Go for it. No, you're just like, no, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
Right.
But you at least understand where it all comes from and why absolutely she had to do this for sure.
Yeah. I think I said something like, you go from thinking, oh, that's insane, to thinking, oh yeah, she is insane, but I see why.
Yeah.
By the way, I wanted to just say, like, there are many themes that Flanagan has pulled out of The Haunting of Hill House and then kind of made them his own. And one of them, I think, is this idea of sanity, where to different degrees at different points, we're starting to realize none of these characters are quite sane. I actually was going to say Shirley, at first blush, was kind of the least interesting character to me coming out of the first episode. I was just like, she seems normal. Yeah, she works at a funeral home. That's not a normal job to have, but everybody's got to have a job. It's fine.
Yeah.
Now you realize, like, well, yeah, she puts on a really normal like persona, but she's not normal. She's covering up a lot of baggage with that, with her professional veneer.
She's putting up a better picture to get rid of all the pictures underneath it that are not the picture she wants. And I mean, there's a really interesting, I think you're right. There's a really interesting that happened in episode 1 that I really didn't talk about because we needed to wait until we understood Shirley a little bit more. But when Shirley and Steve are having that fight about him publishing the book, one thing he's reiterating is this idea that mom was like clinically unwell. Like she was mentally disturbed. She was not right in the head. And he says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in that regard. And you as the viewer don't actually know what to make of that in the moment. Like Shirley gets defensive, and like the assumption is that he's talking about her, right? Why else would you say that? But like in that moment, Shirley has not done anything at that point that would make you go, she's not well in the head. And we have Nell in the background, who we know is unwell, and we have Luke, who is suffering from an addiction disease. And so like you're like, maybe he was just talking about Nell, or maybe he was just talking about Luke, and you don't actually know. But it's like, that would be a weird thing to say in this moment, and her reaction to it was weird. So it's like, now going through this episode, you're like, oh, maybe he was just specifically talking about Shirley in that moment, that your mental health issues, Shirley, come from your mother. And I think it's accurate to say, at least as far as what we know at this point, Matt, the child who is most reverential to their mother is Shirley, right? She's got the forever home, in the model of the forever home in the funeral home. She's got a framed picture of her mother right next to the forever home, sitting there on her desk. Like Steve had a very pragmatic way of dealing with their mother's death. It was like, mom was unwell. She was crazy. Like these are facts. This is what happened. She got crazy and she killed herself. And Shirley doesn't seem to agree with that idea. And that is why one of the other things we see in this episode that we didn't know in the first episode was, I'm sure the rest of the family didn't love the book that Steve wrote, but it was definitely Shirley who was the most upset about it. Like it did not fracture Steve's relationship with all of his siblings. It definitely fractured his relationship with Shirley. And that makes sense when you see Shirley's kind of adoration of her mother that is still to this day.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Even more general than that, maybe she wanted to have a pretty picture of her childhood that she could pretend was true. And
perfect.
So not only does Steve damage the image of her mother, but damages the whole image of their family and their childhood. And yeah, like it's funny. I like I said a minute ago, I thought of her as the most normal going into the episode, and that's because it's very important to her to seem that way. Mm-hmm. She gives off she is effortfully giving off the vibe of being normal.
Yeah,
that's great.
I love her. I love her so much. All flaws and all. Like I think she's a great character, and she really just bursts out of the screen in this one. Like, you know, we talked glowingly about Elizabeth Reeser back in Ouija Origin of Evil, and she's phenomenal in this part. Like this is so great.
Yeah, just one thing that I've noticed really solidly about this show in particular is the child actors and their adult counterparts really seem to be on the same wavelength.
You
know, they I don't know why, I don't know how they accomplish this, but it just feels like they share an understanding of this character, their sort of mannerisms, even kind of the way they use their voice and certain facial expressions just feel like, I swear there's certain facial expressions that the child actor makes where I have a hard time like accepting that that's not just the same person. You know, it's like it's like they're doing that thing, that consternated thing right here around the brow, you know.
And I wonder like who in that relationship matched to who, right? Like is it the adult actors that like observed the kids and what they did and kind of mimicked it? One of the things that I think is happening, and you'll let me know if you agree with, I think Henry Thomas is definitely trying to do a Timothy Hutton. Like even that line we talked about before, that was like, not our finest hour, no doubt. Like that to me felt like a Timothy Hutton line. And so I do think, you know, we talked about the eye coloring last week, which by the way, we talked about that as if we were like 100% sure it was just colored contacts. There is a chance they just digitally did it, right? Like I just want to put that out there. Like there's a chance that this was just digital. I forgot we live in the future now. But I don't know. Do you think Henry Thomas is doing a little bit of Timothy Hutton?
It's so funny because we didn't talk about this at all, but I had this exact same thought as I was like, because we just saw him in a different movie. We kind of know how his normal voice is basically.
Yeah.
And he is doing a different thing. And I was noticing it, I think last week or last time we talked about the show, I was like, he's doing a specific thing. And then it was only this week that I actually clicked and I was like, oh, he's just doing an not, impression might be too strong a word, but he's 50% of the way to doing a Timothy Hutton impression.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is really like, yeah, it's not like he's like completely changed his voice, but he's kind of changed the cadence, maybe shifted the timbre just a little bit closer to his natural voice.
Yeah.
I totally was already thinking this before you said it, that he's kind of just bringing his performance in line with Timothy Hutton's persona.
Great. I'm so glad. That makes me happy. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the purple box a little bit, because this is one of these. I mean, I'm going to call it a Flanaganism, but it's just like we could also call it a good writing ism. Where we do this really interesting thing where we have the father of Max, the little boy whose grandmother has died, comes into the funeral home, and he is carrying with him a box of pictures and things from his mother. That he's giving to her to share to help with the whole process, to like have things of hers to, I think it's jewelry, right? Like it's things to put on the body. And the scene is really interesting. And I love how Flanagan's camera shoots it, because we see Shirley clock this box. Like we do this very obvious kind of insert shot of close up on the box and then back to Shirley. And we're like, what the fuck is that about? And like everyone in the scene kind of notices it too a little bit. And it's like, we don't really even know what any of that means. And even like the first time the box is introduced in the flashback, when it has the kitten's corpse in it, I don't even think that consciously occurred to me in that moment. Oh, it's the same box. It's the exact same box, actually. But of course, you eventually realize throughout the episode that it is the same box, and it's the way that, and like maybe this is a way that we're demonstrating Shirley's loose grip on sanity, right? Because let's be clear here. Shirley is seeing things throughout this episode, and some of them might be ghosts, sure. Perhaps her mother in the morgue in the end of the episode is just the ghost of Liv Crain, saying, "Hey, baby." But she sees the mortician from her childhood sitting on her couch having a drink. She sees the bug crawl out of her sister's mouth. With that didn't actually happen, right? She is consistently seeing things, and like seems to like have no conscious reaction. Well, she has a reaction to them, but like it seems like this is par for the course. And so it's like, was this box this guy is holding up to her, that did it look identical to the box that her first kitten was buried in? Maybe it did, right? Maybe it's just two similar boxes, or maybe she's just creating this look in her mind because this is the thing that she's thinking about right now, and she sees things.
Yeah. Totally. It's funny. I think I was, until this moment, I think I was assuming that what happens at the end of the episode was just ghosts. But you're totally right that we have so much ambiguity regarding the things that she's seeing over the rest of the episode and her reactions to them, or lack thereof, which makes it seem like, well, maybe this is just a thing that she deals with. She deals with seeing things that aren't there. She knows that this is a problem, and so she's gotten used to just kind of pretending that she didn't see it.
Yep.
I think this actually ties really well into another beat that you and I wanted to talk about, which is the moment when they're children, when they hear the banging in the walls.
Yes.
Which is a fantastically creepy scene. Just I loved it.
And perfectly pulled from the novel as well, right? I mean, the circumstances of it are different, but essentially this is a scene from the book.
So I loved it going from like them being angry, I mean, like, why are you banging on the wall, to like, okay, who's pulling this prank, to like screaming of, you know, in terror. It was great. It was great. Just loved everything about that scene.
Yeah.
And then the dad comes in, and then you realize, wait, is this just a dream? And the fascinating thing about it, because the dad kind of turns all demonic, and then she like screams and wakes up.
His mouth stretches, and it's really creepy.
It's fantastic.
Really
I loved it.
Yeah.
So what I loved about this is I'm like, oh my God, we're pulling like a concept out of the novel, The Haunting of Hill House, and kind of doing this and then putting it into the show, because we don't know whether that was a thing that happened in her childhood, and then she's having a nightmare about it, or if it's just a nightmare that she's having now, or maybe a hallucination she had as a child, possibly. I don't know. That's probably the lowest on my list. But point being, we don't know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure Henry Thomas's face did not like stretch open and scare his children, and so like I don't think it's a recreated full cloth memory, but it is like it is a very interesting kind of mess with the audience moment, because it's structured itself as a flashback to a scene when they were kids, just like every other flashback to a scene when they were kids throughout the course of the story so far. And it plays out that way from beginning to end. I do love, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about Theo yet. She hasn't gotten her moment in the spotlight, but we do get a little bit of Theo here. And I do love Theo marching into Shirley's room, pissed off at her, being like, what do you want? She has so much attitude. I love that actress that's playing young Theo. I really like her. And then it turns into fear, and yeah, I mean, what was that? Like, was that a memory of a thing that happened? And of course she added a little stinger onto the end, and even the stinger onto the end is an interesting thing, because it kind of demonstrates, if that was just a dream, if that was just an addition of Shirley's subconscious, doesn't that say something about how she views her father? That she goes through this, she has this memory of this moment in her life that was very scary, and Daddy comes in to comfort them, just like he did in the first episode when Nell had a bad dream and saw the bent neck lady. And then he turns into a monster.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We know Shirley's relationship with her father is also bad, right? Like, I think one through line so far is that all of them have a bad relationship with Hugh in their adult life. So does she see him as the bad guy, the monster? I don't know.
She may, because I mean, she may think on some level you killed my mom, even though it is an entirely unfair thought. But she doesn't really know, is the thing. So and it kind of allows her to see her mom as her sainted old, deceased mother, and her dad as the guy who let this happen. Yeah.
Well, one thing she does say that we know she believes definitively is, she says Dad's the reason Nellie's all fucked up in the first place, which we don't know what she means by that. Does she mean because of what happened in the house that day, that like that is the origin point of every problem with Nell? Is, I mean, one thing we do know is that like he never told the children what happened, right? Like he comes out of the house, he's kind of in his first interviews with the police, he's talking about ghosts and supernatural stuff, and then he kind of calms himself down and he rewrites his story to just be like, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. She killed herself, we left, that's it, I'm not saying anything. And he doesn't say anything to the press, but he doesn't say anything to any of his children either. He's never told them the story of what happened. So they've had to live their entire life with, Mom killed herself, but we don't know why. And some of them saw stuff, right? Like Steve did, as he was being carried out of the house, saw his mom like behind him in on the second floor. And he doesn't know what that means, because he's been given no information or reference for it or anything. And so like it totally understands why the relationship is so fractured between these kids and their dad. Perhaps he has a reason for that, but we don't know.
Yeah. I want to return to this idea that she's obsessed with appearances and the image, you could say.
Sure.
Because one thing, one reason why she rejects her dad is he kind of makes it difficult for her to have this image of normalcy. I also want to connect this to, this is just good, but both a good Flanaganism and also just good writingism is like everything in the episode is of a coherent theme, which is the theme of her caring a lot about appearances and papering things over. And this, what I want to connect this to is the reason why she has the relationship she does with Luke. And I guess I'm coming out real kind of harsh on Shirley, honestly. But like, there's a through line which is like, don't worry, Luke, we'll get you sorted out. Here's an absurd amount of money that I'm going to put up to get you into rehab so that we can fix you. We're going to fix you, Luke. You're going to be all fixed, and then you're going to be fine, and then everything's going to be normal. And then Luke is not fixed. Luke is not fixed by her $6,000.
Yeah.
And this pisses her off. And then when Luke tries to show up to Nellie's wedding, Shirley is basically like, hey, this is a wedding. Everything in a wedding is supposed to be pretty and perfect and fixed. And you're not fixed. So you need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And then she regrets this decision, actually. So like that's actually how the episode ends, is her crying with regret and saying, I'm sorry, Nellie, because because Nellie said, she said, it's going to be a perfect wedding. And Nellie said almost perfect. And it's obvious from context that she means it's because Luke couldn't be here.
Yeah.
And she had just told Luke to leave.
Yeah.
And all little girl wanted was her brother to be at her wedding.
Her twin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a little crack in this dynamic, in this this structure of hers, this idea that like, I was wrong to have done that.
Yeah. I love this line of thinking. I mean, I love the kind of going over some of those moments you talked about, like the scene where we cut back to them checking Luke into the rehab facility. I think is so interesting in many levels. The first of which is that it's 6 years ago. And we get through context that it is prior to Steve writing The Haunting of Hill House and publishing it, because his relationship with Shirley still seems intact. And also he's talking about how nobody cares about historical fiction and his novels aren't selling and he can't afford to pay for his part of the rehab because he's broke. And I don't know, it was like, I want to get into what you talked about in a minute, but just like that really stuck out to me as a thing, Matt, because that means, like, I don't know, I think the first time I watched the first episode, there was an idea in my head of like a very young Steve published this novel very early in his career when he realized he wasn't making it. And then he's just kind of been living off this concept for years and years and years. And instead, the reality is maybe 5 years before the events of this show, Steve broke down and finally decided to write and publish this book, and since then has written like 10 other stories of this vein where it's just like he's just like throwing them out like they're monthly Goosebumps books or something. And like I just really like, this really reinforces to me the idea that like Luke's books suck, or not, sorry, Steve's books suck. They're probably not very good at all, and he's really just like churning them out like they're like garbage. Let's be clear here. Like we like fast writers. We like Stephen King. Stephen King could write that many books in that period of time. But I'm going to go ahead and be comfortable in my opinion that Steve is not Stephen King.
I think the show wants us to not think that Steve is Stephen King. Yes. I think, I think he's sort of sold out, I guess you could say. He literally profited off of his family's trauma, and now he is literally profiting off of other people's trauma.
Yep.
That we basically, I think we agreed on that last week.
Yeah. But one of the, like, to kind of get back to what you were talking about, like it is really interesting to me. We go back to the 6-year period, and one of the things we see is these kids are like, they still have some semblance of a relationship with each other, right? I think it really stuck out to me that they're all there. All 5 of them are there for Luke in this moment. And the how much has changed in 6 years, where Theo is not speaking to Nell at all. Luke, like both Steve and Shirley are just done with Luke. They're just tired of it. Like we see this point of, and maybe that's an illusion. Maybe just the fact that they're there for him in that moment is meant to show an illusion of togetherness amongst these children, and that really wasn't real. But just like we do see, all of that is fractured since then. And part of the reason it's fractured is because Shirley made a unilateral choice at Nell's wedding to tell Luke to go home, and then told nobody else about it. Like we get this moment where Theo is arguing with Shirley about the funeral, and like she's like, Shirley, you're trying to have this funeral too fast. You have to give the others time to get here. You have to give Steve and Luke and Dad time to get here. Like especially Luke, like he missed her wedding, he can't miss her funeral. It's like, oh, you didn't tell her, Shirley? You didn't tell her that he came and you sent him away? Like that, right. You have redefined how your siblings look at each other. And like, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. Just one really kind of dark punctuation mark on that is that she literally hands him a wad of money and is like, get lost. I don't care if you spend it on the cab or spend it on shooting up, just get out of here. And it's like, God, that is such a, I was going to say heartless. I think it's actually not heartless, is that she's so angry and hurt that she's lashing out, and she probably immediately regretted doing that and saying that. But but she's nonetheless the kind of person she did do and say that. So
I think it's very relatable to spend $6,000 on someone to get them help and then learn that they've abandoned that help and basically set your money on fire, to be mad at them and say some stupid shit that you regret. But it definitely has consequences. I also just want to say, like, do we have to, like, that seems like the Rolls Royce of rehab places. Like, holy shit, $6,000 a month is a lot of money.
They really love their brother, right? Like that's, I think once again, like I feel the need to take seriously this remark, because it's like, well, you don't want to be able to be accused of not doing your absolute best to take care of your siblings, right? And it's such an interesting kind of little, micro short story about the way families are, where there's so many layers of history and propriety and like face saving and all these things happening under the surface. And we're gradually peeling back these layers and coming to understand things. But to me, spending way more money than you can afford on rehab is a totally like simultaneously ridiculous and predictable thing to happen.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be the one in that group who's like, hold up, I know there's a discount rehab place.
Can we do the discount rehab? Yeah. No, you're so right. I find Nell's like obsession with the horseback riding and horses absolutely adorable in this scene. Again, like we've been shown very limited windows of Nell so far in the story, right? Like we see her in flashback. We saw her ghost in the first episode, and then we see young Nell. We haven't seen adult Nell very much. The two we get here is that moment at the rehab, and then the moment before her wedding, which, by the way, the man she's marrying is named Arthur. So there's another Hill House character from the book coming into the show. Pretty great stuff.
But we don't know what happened with them or what happened to him or any of that. So that's actually enticing. That's one thing I was thinking about, is like, well, she did get married, and then we know nothing else about that guy or what happened there. So,
no, for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think Flanagan does such a good job with this, and like, 2 points I want to make here. One is just like, I think he does a really, really good job of setting stuff up in a way that you clock it and notice it, and then he can pay it off in another moment, and you don't have to watch the show twice to go, oh, that's what you were doing there. Like the one I'm thinking of right now is at the very beginning of the episode, we have back in the past, Liv talking to her children about the concept of, when I flick the porch light twice, that means it's time to come home. Yeah. And we really emphasize that, right? We hit the beat multiple times. We have her say it. We have Shirley echo it. Then she demands that Nell echoes it as well. And then when Shirley is going outside and passes Luke, she reminds Luke of the rule as well. And it's like, we're really like hitting this beat. And so even if you're not aware that we're hitting this beat, maybe in a ridiculous amount of times, your brain still clocks it. And then we end the episode on this perfect moment where the Forever House light clicks twice, as if the ghost of Liv is saying, hey, it's time. Yeah. It's time to come home. And where is home? Well, I think we all know where home is, right?
Yep. Time to come
where
back
Liv's
to
forever
that.
home is, because that's where she died.
Yep.
But he sets that all up beautifully, right? Like you don't even realize you're being set up for something in the moment, and then it pays off. And this is a consistent thing throughout all of this, is that like all these moments are setups and payoffs that you don't even fully know about.
You don't. I think we're, most people are film savvy enough to know that when there's like a lingering shot on a thing, that it's going to come back later. That Flanagan accomplishes the same effect without doing it obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely times when he directs your attention to something and you're like, okay, the box, like you said, the purple box. Okay, the purple box. I'll remember the purple box.
Yes, I will clock that. Yeah.
But then there's other stuff like you're saying where it's just the kids are, okay, so maybe in a minute the mom's going to flash the lights and then they're going to go in and that's it. But no, it stays in your mind, and then he uses that fact later. He's just very, very aware of what expectations he has set up, and then he tends to pay them off in a way that was not actually the way that you thought they were going to be paid off.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, it's a great inversion. The other point I wanted to make with some of this stuff is, I think there is a risk in the story structure that this show has decided to take on, at least for these first few episodes, which is each episode is going to focus on a different character. And not only are we going to focus on a different one of the Crain children, but we're kind of going to focus on the similar time period, right? That's one thing we haven't definitively said, is that Steve's episode carries us through to the moment he realizes that Nellie is dead. And then at least for the first like 20 minutes or so of Shirley's episode, it's before that has happened. So we're not only focusing on different characters, we're focusing on the same time period roughly. I think Shirley's episode enhances the timeline a little bit, and maybe that will be a pattern set by the ones to go forward. But the one thing I like about this so much is that there's a risk with this kind of thing that like you lose some of the other characters, right? It's just like, this is an episode focusing so much on Shirley and Shirley's and to great effect to help us love and define the character of Shirley. But I think what the structure of the episode does so well is we also get to advance the stories for every other character. Like, there's not much Steve in this episode, right? There's not a lot, but we do get some Steve, and we do learn about Steve. Like, I found the moment where he calls his sister to tell his sister that Nell is dead, I found that whole sequence incredibly interesting, because this is Steve, who we know is a man who doesn't believe that ghosts are real, that thinks all this stuff is bullshit and has thought it's been bullshit the whole time. And he just saw a fucking ghost.
Yeah.
And he's trying to talk to his sister about the fact that he just saw a fucking ghost, and she is not listening.
Yeah.
Like, she just found out her sister's dead, right? So she's having a reaction to that. But he's like trying to find the words to explain the way he's feeling or what he's thinking, or even just what happened to him in that moment. And then like, it's so funny because we'll cut to later scenes of Steve where he's on the phone with her and he's kind of back to his calm, collected self a little bit. And to the point you wonder, like, what was the moment he got off the phone with Shirley and then probably hooked up with his dad at some point to go looking for Luke, because that's kind of what we're told they're doing in the background of this episode, is they're out looking for Luke, who is, as we know, run away from rehab. But like, you see in that moment this wounded, like, brain exploded version of him. And so like, and we do that with all the characters. I think like we get a little bit more of Theo in this episode as well, right? We get moments where we see Theo interact with her niece and nephew, and we kind of see the relationship there. A little bit more information on her. The show keeps drawing attention to the gloves that she's wearing very specifically. Wondering if you have any theories about that, actually, before we move on.
Yeah, so she tried to play it off as, oh, I'm a germaphobe. Yeah. My first thought, probably because I've got too much Stephen King on the brain, was that it's kind of a dead zone situation where maybe if she touches people, then she gets like overwhelming psychic, impressions that she wants to avoid. So she just covers her hands so she never accidentally touches people. And that's, just the first thought that I had. If I turn out to be wrong, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just
maybe she's just rogue. You never know.
Maybe she sucks away their life force and absorbs their powers. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair hypothesis, and it's definitely something the show is drawing your attention to very specifically. Like, that's the scene with her niece, where her niece has now put on gloves,
Mm.
And is wearing gloves like Cool Aunt Theo,
Mhm.
is definitely meant to. Hey, have you noticed that she's always wearing gloves? Have you noticed that? We've pointed this out a couple times to you. Again, like this is Mike Flanagan subtly / not so subtly setting things up for the future. But
you've got to keep those balls in the air. You got to keep them in play between episodes if you're not going to get back to that thing for a while. I think that's smart.
And to continue on with my point, we get a little more with Luke. We see not too much, but a little bit more. We have this kind of recurring beat with Luke and his imaginary friend that we're not sure what to do with yet. Like, it's interesting because we have in the structure of the past, right? We have our hidden ghosts in the background, right? There's a couple in this episode. I don't know if you noticed them.
So I'm going to interject and say I never noticed the ghosts. I've never noticed the ghost. What I do notice is when there's like a statue in the background, and I'm like, "Oh, is that one of the ghosts?"
Too. Yeah,
and then it never is. It's just a statue, and they do put the statues there so that you're kind of like, "What the?" And then you're like, "Okay, no, it's just pretty sure it's a statue."
Well, the hidden ghosts in this one, at least the ones that I noticed, are in the early scene when Shirley and her mom are talking about the forever house and how a house is a body. There is over Olivia's shoulder, there's a ghost standing there in the background, and I think it actually moves at some point to like sit down at the table, but it's mostly just looking at her. There's also a ghost, I believe, actually out in the daylight, over Shirley's shoulder, that's just standing there looking at her, but that one is like never in focus, so you just kind of see a vague shape of something. But anyway, back to my point, we have Luke's ghost, and I think this is really interesting because the ghosts we've seen in the show so far have been either these hidden ones in the background that some people don't notice, and then we've had Nell in the present. But this seems to be like, this is just like a ghost that we had the bent neck lady as well. Sorry, but this seems to be a ghost that like Luke is noticing and is just like kind of hanging out there. Like, none of the hidden ghosts in any of the scenes with the hidden ghosts have been things that a character has been like, "Hey, what's that? Is that a ghost?" But this girl, the ghost that Luke is seeing, seems to be different from that. Just wanted to call that out because the show is calling that out.
Right. Yeah. So like Nell is being haunted specifically by this bent neck lady, and Luke is being haunted specifically by this girl. The mom has something going on with her headaches, right? And so everybody,
color storms.
Her color storms, which are.
Have you ever you get migraines? Do you get, is yours a color storm?
No, I mean, I've never heard them called that, but like some people get migraine with aura, which is like it's a neurological thing that makes you get basically blind and sort of hallucinate like shimmering fields of color. So I can imagine someone calling it a color storm. I don't happen to get those. Although one time I did get an aura with no migraine, which meant I basically just went blind for an hour.
For an hour?
Yeah, it was interesting.
That's terrifying.
You learn to live with this. I mean, it wasn't great, I'm not going to lie, but I kind of knew what it was, so it didn't freak me out that much.
Matt.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. So talking about Luke, though, like Luke being haunted by, sort of Luke being specifically haunted is an interesting thing to point out, right? Because we've mentioned it several times in this conversation, but we never quite specifically talked about the fact that he became a heroin addict. Even at that point in the timeline when the siblings were all grown up, but everything still kind of seemed hunky-dory. Nobody's life had fully gone off the rails yet, except the context of that is their meeting at the rehab center for Luke's heroin addiction. So something has already gone awry with Luke. And we don't really know what his life story looked like, from the time of being the adorable kid with the Coke bottle glasses to being 9 feet tall. Because that actor is very tall.
He's very tall.
We don't really know how things got that way.
Yeah. No, that is definitely one of the things that we're holding back, but still feeding little breadcrumbs of. The other one I wanted to talk about is just like Olivia and Hugh. We're getting more and more of them, and I think I want to bring this back to the kind of the conversation between the two of them about how they handled Shirley's first brush with death, because I think this is a really interesting conversation that I think, you know, on top of the fact that we're introducing this concept of the color storms, only when they're in Hill House, they're not color storms, they're blackness, which is terrifying. And then also like the way the specific way they fought in that moment, I think was very interesting, because it's like we're perhaps trying to show like cracks in their marriage. Like I was very interested in the way in which Hugh voiced his displeasure and how things went. Like for example, the line that he says, I believe, is, "I would have liked to have been part of that conversation," which is like kind of passive aggressive a little bit there.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Oh, would you have said something different?" And the way he's like, "Probably not." It's just like, I'm not going to say no. I would have done it exactly like you. You did great. But it's like, I mean, probably not. And that leads to their whole fight about all of it, and the wonderful "this was not our finest hour, no doubt" line. But it does, in my mind, like, we're starting to mold the way they interact with each other and how that relationship works. And I think the cracks in it is a fair thing to say. Like, the ways in which they fight, the ways in which they deal with disappointment in each other. The one thing that I thought was really interesting was her reaction to him, and the way she got defensive, and the way her defensiveness turned from, she goes through this very quick arc where she turns from like annoyed at him, and then angry, and then immediately shifts the blame back on him to like, why did you let these sick kittens in her room in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm bringing that up is because there is a moment when Shirley first learns about the death of Nell, where she goes through like half of the stages of grief in like 30 seconds, where she just like doesn't believe it at first, and then almost so fast is just like, "I told you, Steve.
Yeah.
I told you, and this is your, like, you didn't take it seriously enough, Steve, and this is your fault." And it's just like, I do think there's a lot of intentional Liv and Shirley echoing we're doing in this episode, and that was one of those moments I really clocked.
100,000,000%. Yes, I didn't think of that until now, but you're right. It's the same conversation. Yeah, it's no, this is your fault. And fundamentally, the reason a person does that is because they are like hurt and scared, and they want to push those feelings away. And a quick way to do that is to sublimate them into anger and say, "Oh, this is your fault," actually, even though you know, she knows very well that she could have done something also, you know. She knows it's somewhat disingenuous to think like, "Oh yeah, well, this is your fault. I couldn't have done anything." It's like, no, you could have.
Everyone probably could have done more. Which by the way is another, I think, thing we're doing with the Nell character, is we are planting seeds on how her relationship with the rest of her family worked. Even Nell as a young age, right? Like the opening sequence of this episode, in the flashback, Shirley's talking to her mother about the Forever House. Nell walks up and says, "Shirley, will someone have a tea party with me? Everyone keeps telling me no. Keeps telling me no." And then Liv says, "Sorry, Nell, I can't have a tea party with you right now. I'm working." And then Shirley's like, "Let's go outside instead." And Nell is like, "I guess." Like, what Nell came in there to do is find someone to have a tea party with her. And even like, Shirley very quickly breaks off from Nell when they go outside and ends up walking on her own, and that's where she finds the wasp nest and the kittens. Like, she's left her sister behind in those moments. So it's like, I do think we are laying the grounds of like, Nell has kind of always been the more ignored one in the family, and like the person who's been asking for things and been ignored, and I think that like seeing that established from when they were kids all the way through her eventual death, I think is very purposeful.
Totally. And sad, right? I continue to, every time we see little Nell, I'm just heartbroken to remember that this is this is the character that grows up to have such a tragic life and then kill herself.
That is something we haven't said. Just to say it, like the thing we do learn in this episode is not only is Nell dead, but she is via suicide, right? Like I don't know if we knew that. Maybe Hugh said it like over the phone at the very end of episode 1, but I'm not sure if we knew that.
Yeah, if he said it, it was incredibly garbled, and I didn't pick it up. And I think even it was maybe by design that it was unclear what he was saying anyway. So
yeah,
the moment to mention this is kind of past. But you were talking about the fact that Steve is having this conversation with Shirley on the phone, and like he's literally still sitting on the floor, in the same position he was when he was scared by the ghost. So this is 30 seconds after that, right? Like so not only did he also just found out his sister was dead and just saw a ghost at the same time. So he's in that moment like actually in shock. And having this conversation, and she's yelling at him, and he's on another planet. Really, like you can see in his performance, he's just like, seems important that I try to communicate that I saw a ghost, but I know that there's no way I can possibly do that, and even what I'm saying right now is probably too like cerebral for the thoughts that are going through his head at this moment. He's just like, reacting.
Well, he doesn't take the bait of her like flipping the blame around on him, right? Like he's so shell shocked and maybe just exhausted by that line of argument that has happened between the two siblings forever, that he's just like hangs up the phone. And he's just like, I'm done. Related to that, I really love the moment that Shirley goes out to tell Theo and is walking to the house in the middle of the night, and then Theo's light turns on because, of course, as you've suspected, she has some sort of psychic power and knows on some level that her sister's coming to talk to her about this. Or maybe it's less boring and just like they called Theo too. But I think that's what that scene is meant to represent, that like she's almost at the house to tell her, and then the light switch flips on.
She feels her coming. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. So a couple other just random things I wanted to mention. Every time Flanagan does the thing that he does with darkness, I'm going to mention it because it's one of my favorite things that he does as a filmmaker, is treat darkness like correctly. And in this specific moment I'm bringing up is the wasp nest under the table, where she is in the light, but she can't really see what's under the table. And she uses the camera flash, and you see a flash of what she sees. And it's so brief that you're like, was that like a dead body? Was that a creature? What did I just see? And you're like, the dread is building in you, because you're like, she's gonna shine another light on it, and then we're gonna see it, and it's gonna be something horrible. It's gonna be horrifying.
Some monster is there.
And then of course it just turns out to be the wasp nest, but it succeeded exactly in the way that I think you wanted it to, where you're like, the dread comes from the fact that you can't see it, that you just got a tiny glimpse of it.
I think he gets so much mileage out of, I know you expect something to happen in this moment, and so I'm not going to do it stuff. I think that is one of those. The other thing I'm thinking of is the entire time that Shirley is working on Nell's corpse, there's a part of you that's just kind of waiting for Nell to move. And like we eventually do the bug thing, which I think is very effective and great. But like, you're just kind of, even at the very end of the episode, when she's walking out of the room and flips the switch, like, if you asked me to put down money, I would not put down money on, Liv's corpse is going to be there now too. I would put down money on, she flips the light and looks back, and Nellie has now stood up or sat up or something like that. Like, and you can tell that he knows you're expecting that, and he's playing into it. And like, he's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're thinking, viewer. And I am loving it, and I am living in it. And I am using that to deal with the tension of the scene.
100%. Yeah. There's so many shots when the camera is just taking a long, lingering shot of Nellie's dead face, and you're just like, the eyes are going to open. The eyes are going to open. The eyes are going to open any second. And
especially since that would match perfectly with the cat's eyes opening, right? Like that horrible, horrible moment of the last remaining kitty opens her eyes, and they're white.
That's totally what I thought was going to happen. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. I think the other way he accomplishes this is I think he shoots that room in the mortuary very specifically. Like there's almost moments where like I think the first time we see that room is when she is down there standing in front of the table that her sister will eventually be on and talking to the assistant or whatever about how she has to drive to X place and pick up the body. And the way Flanagan shoots that is from outside the room. Like we are outside the room. We see the frame of the door into the room, and that is what's framing them in the scene. And when we go back to that shot when they actually put the body on the tray, that's the angle that Flanagan shoots from once again. He does this shot from outside the room, and then as the assistant exits the room, Shirley begins to unzip the corpse bag, for lack of a better term. The camera slowly starts to push into the room. Like we're slowly being like admitted access into this room as Shirley's about to do this incredibly intimate and yet also violent thing to the body of her sister.
Yeah.
It's just great stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love all that.
I think we should like say, because we haven't said, I think that the show makes this very clear. So it's not like we're not going to teach anyone in this moment, but like the 5 cats are the 5 Crain children. Like the show makes this very, very clear that by having characters say, hey, there are 5 of them, just like there are 5 of me. And then I think it's even it's Nell who says, that one's me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we actually get to see which one she's pointing at, but then one of the 5 cats die before the rest of them.
Yeah.
Wonder what that could be.
And then they all die.
Yeah.
And the mama cat is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah. Well, did you catch that thing that Liv says to her daughter in that moment is kittens aren't supposed to be without their mommies. And no matter how much you love them, you're not their mommy. Right.
Uh-huh.
So I think we see Shirley, as much as she fucked up with Luke, I think we do see Shirley take on kind of a maternal role with her siblings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that is in the moments we see them all together. That is what it feels like it is, right? Like when she is doing Nellie's makeup at their wedding, their mom cannot be there. Their mom cannot be at the wedding. She's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But Shirley's kind of taking on that role. She's taking on that maternal role.
Yeah.
And we're saying here, in essence, is this idea that like you can try to be that role as much as you want, but you're not their mommy. And maybe we're starting to get a little bit of information on like what, like, again, is the Liv in the end of this episode an hallucination, or is that Liv's ghost saying, children, come home to mommy?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the light flickering at the very end of the episode certainly seems to say that something is beckoning them home, right?
Yeah.
It started with Nell, and then killed her,
right?
And then 4 to go.
Yeah, right. I think that's the thing about her and her hallucinations, Shirley's hallucinations, is we don't know, and maybe we'll never know. Maybe this will be just like the book where it just sustains the ambiguity the whole time.
Sure.
Whether like all of her hallucinations are actually just the supernatural fucking with her, seeing a bug crawl out of Nell's mouth is simultaneously the kind of, horrible schizophrenic hallucination that could plausibly happen to a person due to just mental illness, and also potentially a ghost messing with her. And we don't know which it is, and maybe never will.
Yeah. I think that's great stuff to think of. Really loved that final shot of the light flickering. I mean, we talked about why the setup paid off really good, but the shot where the camera holds in the office and we like see Shirley getting further and further away from camera as she's slowly turning lights off in the house as she moves from the office, presumably up to like the living area. Yeah. And it's not until she's fully gone and everything's fully in dark that we get the light flickering on.
And because she's not there to witness it, we know that, in the language of movies, it's like this really happened.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's a great point, because we've kind of established her hallucinating. So if she witnessed that happen, it would communicate to the viewer that maybe we should doubt this. But yeah, because of the way they structured it, there's no doubt that is a thing that just occurred. Yeah.
I think that brings to like the last comment that I had queued up in my head, which is like the theme of impermanence versus permanence, and connected to the idea of a forever house, connected to the idea of death, and trying to sort of cover our eyes to death and pretend that we can just fix it by embalming the body.
Yeah, fix it forever. Don't forget that word is used there as well. Yeah,
fix it forever, and basically this delusion shared by, I think, both Shirley and her mom, that there is such a thing as forever, that we can, if we do it just right, if we get all the details right, if you get the details of the embalming right, or if you get the details of the house floor plan right, if you do it just right, then you will have made something that is forever, and it will never end, and it'll be perfect and last for all time, and you're done and perfected. And in both cases, it's like, no, that's not the way the world is. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum. I like the idea. I like the notion of a forever house, but it is kind of funny, especially thinking about this show, especially as someone who has kids who are just growing at a subjective rate of like 1 inch per day. It's like there is no such thing as forever. Whatever house you think you're going to design for your family, there's going to be like a 1 year period where that house suits the needs of the family.
Yeah.
And then the oldest one is going to want to be out of the house, playing with their friends. And then you're going to blink, turn around, and they're going to be at college, and you're going to have an empty bedroom. Yeah. And then you're going to turn around and they're all gone, and it's like there's no forever here. There's no now you have to downsize. So which I'm trying desperately not to be depressed about this thought, but like the truth is there really is no such thing as a forever house. It's a compelling idea because we have that fantasy, and then we imagine that fantasy is going to persist forever, and it just is not going to persist nearly as long as you want it to.
Yeah. I mean, my parents sold the home that I grew up in 5-6 years ago and downsized. I'm putting downsized in quotes because I love my parents to death. It was like the worst downsizing that a human being has ever done. It's like a brand new giant house that's maybe like it's a little smaller, maybe a little bit. Because they're like, well, we're going to downsize, but also we need rooms for everyone to stay in when they come visit.
Right.
It's like, no, you don't.
Maybe we need more rooms for the grandkids to stay in.
What does downsizing mean to you? Anyway, no. So like, I think you're spot on with this, and like the idea of a home. Like, I think one of the things we have to think about is the difference between a house and the concepts of a house and a home. Where a house is like a physical place where you live, it like walls, floors, not sane. But like home, what is home to you, right? Like what is like conceptually the idea of home? And those are different things, right? Like home doesn't necessarily have to be the physical place that you grew up in or reside or anything. Like, and this idea that you can, that I think Liv introduces, is that this is this place where you can keep everything inside and keep it safe. That's not really how that works either, right? Like yeah, like I think to your point, like kids leave, they leave home. They like it can't be a forever home because all these kids are going to grow up and they're going to make their own forever home. They're going to build their own house and start their own family and define their own home. And like even it will be always true that going back and visiting my parents wherever they live is going to feel like home in a way that that nothing else quite does. But also, I have my own home now, and this is my home, and this is where I have my family, and this is it's my forever home for the next 16 years.
Yeah.
And then my daughter will go to college, and then it won't like, it's just like, this is like, life is impermanent. And that is part of it.
And yet this is impossible for us to come to grips with, right?
Sure.
Like,
Of course.
so I felt like after our conversation about the book, I was listening back to what we talked about, and I was like, I really wished that we had returned and hammered just one last time on no live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality, and the implications of this, because under facing the fact that you're going to die, facing the fact that your kids are going to leave the house and not talk to you more than once a week is too painful to consider. So you tell yourself a little story, tell yourself a little delusion, a little dream, like Larks and Katie did. We dream about the idea of having a forever home, or we dream that we can, master death through some ritual or some way of dealing with it. So
sure,
I think that's one of the ways that the show is tackling this idea. Which, by the way, the show opens with the same line being spoken by Steve in this case, and like all those things that you just said are true. That like it's a fool's errand to think that you're going to stand against the tide of entropy and never die and never age and everything's going to stay perfect, and yet like we all kind of think that we are, because otherwise we would go mad with the dread of it. And that's kind of what all these characters are kind of in their own little dream, their own little delusion, where they feel like they can keep control over things.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there for sure. There's one more wrinkle I want to throw at this idea, which is one of the things that Liv says to her daughter when they're doing the first funeral for the cat. And she's kind of she's trying to convince her why we like speak about someone or something that has died. And what she says is, when we die, we turn into stories. We're all stories in the end. And she compares telling a story about someone to when Shirley takes a picture of someone, in that you're capturing them forever in that picture. That's a really interesting. I think that we haven't talked about the fact that we see Shirley with a camera a lot, and how perfect that is with this idea of fixing things and fixing impermanence, this image of someone, that a camera is a perfect metaphor for that. But I'm curious what your take on this idea of stories, because what I'm getting at here, to me, is that like, while I agree that like nothing is forever and the idea of impermanence is just part of existence, I do kind of agree with the idea that like stories and storytelling is how you can live forever, essentially, like through stories about you, through stories by you. Like this is a method. This is one of the reasons why I love stories, right? It's the thing that Stephen King has joked about, that in 100 years, they're still gonna be talking about that fucking clown. That like there are, you raise to a certain level, there are stories that become so ubiquitous, either broadly or personally in your own circle, that they are kind of a captured, frozen moment of who you are or who you were.
Yeah, it's funny because I agree. Like personally, I find it to be a very compelling way of thinking about death. Like it's one of the lenses that I can pick up if I ever feel any degree of anxiety about death. I that's a handy one for me, is to be like, well, you're what you do in life echoes in eternity, and you leave a legacy, and the legacy is a story. And so I am sympathetic to that. I do like it personally. I do suspect, though, that the show is not necessarily putting it forth as like the answer. I can't help but think about the fact that like the story of the kittens is kind of a malleable story.
Sure.
Where it's like the story of the kittens was one thing up until the moment that a bug crawled out of a dead cat's mouth. And then it kind of became a different story. And that and that was literally after the kitten was dead. So it wasn't even part of the kitten's life. And yet that really impacted the way that Shirley carried that story. for the rest of her life. And then it kind of almost, to fully go full circle in this conversation, kind of almost became a different story yet again when she saw her mom's open casket funeral, and that had a different, entirely different effect on her. And then it's like, well, these are like interweaving stories that are kind of having a pretty unexpected culmination of her deciding to work as a mortician.
Yeah.
So it's not straightforward what that story is, maybe, is what you could say.
No, I like this. I think, okay, let me try to tie this all together. Like, the stories we tell ourselves about the people we've lost are just another, like, veneer that we put over them, like another fancy makeup or open casket. Like, this is just another version of what Shirley is essentially doing. Is like, I think we hear the idea of stories are forever, and you and I, as lovers of stories, like, immediately perk up and be like, yes, absolutely. Storytelling is one of the core facets of humanity, and we love it so much. But yeah, stories are also things that we tell ourselves and we tell others about the way we perceive reality, and how we want to choose to remember and what not to remember. And I think, like, I think you'll probably agree with me on this. Like, one of the themes of the book was this concept of perception, was this concept of how is Eleanor perceiving the events that are going on around her, and the way Shirley Jackson kind of holds back from us if that perception is matching up to Theo's perception, to Luke's perception, to Dr. Montague's perception, and the kind of the confusion of the unknown of that idea. And so it really does strike a chord with me if perhaps, especially since we're getting to see similar events from multiple characters' point of view, if we're going to, like, learn about each child's differing perception on events. Like, we already kind of have that with Steve and Shirley, right? Like, they both look at their mother and they are telling a completely different story about who she was. And that is something we all do constantly.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Because when I'm thinking about how, the idea of my story outliving me is comforting, once again, I'm deluding myself into thinking that the version of the story of Matt that will go on into the world is the version that I want to be told and remembered, and not the version that everyone perceives, which is going to be radically different and subjective person to person.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah, let's not do that. That's why you have to write your memoirs, Matt, so you can control your story.
That's a good point. And then it'll be fixed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll be fixed in time.
Yeah.
Never change. Yep. I love this. I love this episode. I love this show. I loved this conversation. This is all really, really great stuff.
Yeah.
I think one more beat I just wanted to briefly hit, not because there's not really much to do with it right now, and B, I don't even remember, to be quite honest with you, if it pays off in any way. But there's some information with Shirley and her husband around both the health of the business, but then also this secret checkbook she finds of his. That's just like one of those things that, like, feels to me like setup. But I just want to make sure we clocked them and maybe ask, like, what your take on that kind of stuff was.
Yeah, so I noticed the things you're talking about, that they seem to have such a formality and tension between them that it was almost a surprise to find out they were married. I thought they were just maybe business partners, and which is interestingly, I would have called the relationship between the Crain parents formal. By the way, it seemed very stiff, very formal.
Okay.
So that's another mirroring there, but yeah, I mean, it seems like they have a lot of tension over, like, how to run the business, and they say something like, "We had an agreement. You were going to run, the client facing side. I was going to run the business side, right?" And it's like, this is an argument they've had many times, and it's probably because she's not really thinking like a business person. This is therapy for her. This is emotional.
Yeah, she's giving services away at cost or under cost because like she's not interested in doing this as a method of career or making money. She's doing it. Yeah, I think it's a great way of defining her character, and that's still, I think that's defined still early in the episode, and it's just a great way to establish like what she's motivated by, and that more than half of the clients she offers extremely discounted services.
Yeah. It's funny, maybe I'm just a giant critical asshole, but like there's a lot of stuff in this episode where when you first see it, you're like, "Aw, she's such a good person. She's, isn't it a nice thing to do to help people out, like to give them a really big discount when their loved one has died? That's so thoughtful and selfless." And then kind of as you get a more circumspect view of this character, you're like, no, this is just like an obsessive thing for her, and she feels like it's some kind of filling some kind of psychological need for her to do this. It's not really out of generosity in the typical sense of that word. Anyway, yes, I think that we're building towards something. I would be surprised if there's not some kind of payoff with her and her husband having this communication issues, and the fact that he is going behind her back on certain things, and just the fact there really does seem to be a lot of strain in her household. The fact that her son, just seems so just incredibly frustrated with her. I think we're building towards something there.
Yeah, and her aunt is allowing her daughter to not eat her Brussels sprouts, which is just really unforgivable.
Yeah.
Brussels sprouts are delicious, by the way.
I know,
they're really good.
And her aunt threw a Brussels sprout on the floor, I believe.
Yeah, did anyone pick that up? Is that just going to sit there and rot?
I certainly don't think Theo picked it up.
Because one thing is, Brussels sprouts are delicious, but rotting Brussels sprouts is the most disgusting smell in the world. Yeah. If you've ever like not finished Brussels sprouts and like dumped them in the trash can and then like opened the trash can the next day, whoa, no. So next episode, they'll be talking about how there's a weird smell in the funeral home, and it's not going to be the dead bodies. It's going to be the Brussels sprouts. Yeah,
the one that Theo casually and thoughtlessly threw on the floor, just trying to make a kid laugh.
Damn it, Theo. How dare you?
I know.
And then lets her have the cookie as if she ate all her food.
She's an enabler.
She is. That Theo. So, I mean, I ultimately like agree with, again, there's parts of the show that I obviously don't remember, so I can't say definitively with stuff. But yeah, like there's something going on in this family that I think is strained. And I like what you said about like the thing with the discounts coming off as this kind of generous person. I've always personally felt a little uncomfortable by how much it costs to bury someone. Like, it's very expensive. It's a very expensive thing. Like, coffins are very expensive. Grave plots are very expensive. The whole process costs a lot of money. And I, as a human being that lives on the earth, understand that things cost money, and it costs a lot to do these things, and therefore they cost a lot of money to charge. But I've always had this very uncomfortable reaction to that idea, to that concept. It's like someone just died, and now you're telling them they have to spend $50,000. That's insane.
I don't know how much of this is fair, but I do feel like there's a lot of industry built around the fact that people don't want to have to deal with this, don't want to have to think about it, just want it to be over.
True, yeah.
And so they will rush through decisions that they really should not rush through, because who wants to be accused of shopping around for a cheaper coffin for their mother or whatever,
We're going to get discount rehab for bro.
Yeah.
And then discount pine box for mama.
Yeah. You know what? I don't think we need a plot. Didn't mom always say she wanted to be cremated? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, like, this might be too personal a question, but like, do you want to be buried?
Not really. It's funny. I think I just, without ever quite deciding it, I decided that if I die, it'll
hold on, time out, Mr. Nothing is permanent. There's no such thing as forever.
I also said that we all have to have our delusions, didn't I? I think cremation would be better because I don't have any real attachment to my body, even as a living person. So just kind of being turned into ash, and then it's like, yeah, forget about the body.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what's important, and move on.
Yeah, I'm pretty mixed. I don't think I want to be buried, but I also like the idea of like, don't just set me on fire. It'll be fine. I
Yeah.
promise. Like that irks me out too. So I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure my parents have told me they're both going to be cremated. That's their wish at least. My grandmother on my dad's side was cremated. As I mentioned already, my grandparents on my mom's side were not. I don't know. I feel like cremation is becoming more normalized. I don't know. Do you feel that's purely anecdotal? I have no data to support this, but it just feels like that's the case. I also just feel like bodies take up a lot of space, and there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of dying.
Yeah.
So, is it selfish of me to say this land is mine now, and I'm gonna put my corpse in it, and you can't do anything else with it?
So one thing related to that is I think the idea of being buried was way more sort of obvious when it's like, of course I'm going to be buried next to my 13 generations of ancestors and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and wife and, you know, on the family plot. Like if I had a family plot, I think I would just say, yeah, I'm going to be buried in the family plot. And then if somebody wants to pay their respects to the family, you know, dead, then they can go there. But it's like, no, what would actually happen is I would just be buried somewhere near where I die.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no family plot for my family that I know of. And even if there was, they wouldn't ship my body to it, I don't think, because I don't live anywhere near there. So
yeah. One thing my grandmother did that was cremated is we buried her ashes at her request. This was what she wanted. And she it was like my great grandfather, her dad, was buried in New York City. And then her plot for her ashes is actually like on top of it. So like he's buried 6 feet underground. He has his, not a headstone, but just like a plaque on the ground. And then hers is like on top of it. And the plaque is just a little bit further down. I was like, I didn't know that was a thing that people did, but I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. You know, you and I went to the cemetery in Bangor. And that was a beautiful cemetery.
Cemetery. Yeah.
That's one of the few kind of truly spiritual places that I've been to.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I don't get the appeal of a cemetery or having a place to go, a beautiful place to go to remember the person.
Yeah.
It's really kind of, that actually for me loses a lot of practicality if you're just like in some random cemetery by yourself.
I get that. Yeah. I mean, like on my mom's side, like anytime I'm up where my grandparents used to live, like I visit the cemetery where they're buried. Like that's something I try to do. And yeah, like all their family it's not like a plot that I have access to. It's like my parents or I'm going to be buried there, but it is like that part of the family all is buried in the same area. And so, yeah, I like the concept of having a place to go to visit and like to just have like sometimes just having a physical space that is designated for think about this person that has died is I think good for people. And like, especially in the year, the immediate years after you lose the person. I think that matters and is important. And like, that's why I'm kind of torn on it. Cause there's part of me that's like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe I want to be buried, like not for me, obviously I'll be gone, but like for the people that I leave behind that like want a space to go remember me and mourn me and things like that.
You know, I mean, you may have caused me to reconsider or at least made it more of a live question in my mind, because I was kind of just thinking like, yeah, probably cremation, but especially now that I've kind of remembered that Bangor cemetery that we went to, I was like, you know, if that wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. I would like to be buried in the Bangor cemetery, please.
Yeah.
Can we arrange that?
Yeah. It's not too hard to get to Bangor.
No, it's so difficult. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. Great. It's a great way to end the conversation talking about our eventual deaths. It's great. Love it.
We should end every conversation this way.
We kind of do a little bit. I mean, not so directly and obvious as this, but more or less.
More or less.
All right, Matt. That is episode 2, Open Casket. Matt, episode 3 of Hill House is called Touch. Any guesses on who is that one gonna? Okay, well, I didn't even finish asking the question.
I have no idea. No, it's gonna be Theo.
We'll find out next week. All right, before we go for the week, we have discussion questions to talk about. Matt, our question from 2 weeks ago was the one where we forgot to do a discussion question, and I frantically reached out for something, the first thing I thought of. And we got some feedback on this question that it wasn't very good, and screw you guys.
On this question? This week's question?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine question.
All right, what is the question that we're going to be reading some answers from today?
The question was, who's your favorite character from The Haunting of Hill House, the book?
That's a fine question.
It's fine. And you're meant to elaborate on why and talk about the character. All right. Pear Jane says, I really, really want to get to know Mrs. Montague better. For most of her portrayal, she seems like the 1950s version of a cartoon fishwife. I kept thinking of her as Pink Floyd's fat and psychopathic wives that thrash them within inches of their lives. She's also the only person with the intuition and or kindness to recognize that Eleanor should absolutely not be driving herself away from Hill House. And she has the spine to stand up for Eleanor and say it. Is it because she hasn't had time to fall under Hill House's thrall? Is it because under her arrogant exterior, she really does understand people in a way that Luke, Theo, and her husband don't? Or is it because she believes fully in ghosts and is therefore impervious to Hill House madness? In any case, Mrs. Montague would definitely have a plan for dealing with a ghost bear, and I want to know what it is. I bet she would, actually. I bet if you asked her, she'd just be like, of course, darling.
I will just consult Planchette, and then we will have ghost salmon. And
reach into her bodice and pull out a philosophy that she obtained at some point, which is proof against ghost bears.
Matt, what's a philosophy?
I thought you played EverQuest, Scott. It's a thing that contains bits of dead tissue, I think.
How do you spell it?
PHYLACETERY. Maybe it's ARY.
Never heard of this word in my life. Sometimes I just think you say things that are not words just to see if I notice, and I'm always just like, yeah, totally.
If I do, it's not intentional. It's because I'm an idiot who doesn't know how to talk.
I will agree with you that the majority of my vocabulary is informed by the video games I played as a child. I mean, the books I read too, but a lot of the video games. I do not remember the word philosophy in EverQuest, though.
It's important to remember that liches are associated with philosophies.
Oh. Maybe I just said that word differently. Okay.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think
this has nothing to do with Pear Jane's answer whatsoever.
I say phylactery.
Yeah,
I think that's it. I think I'm right here, by the way.
Oh, you might be right. Phylactery.
I think I'm right.
There's not another. Oh my God! I hallucinated an E.
I'm so like in the battle between Matt and Scott of who has the most vocabulary. Matt has won 75,000 times, and this is my first win ever.
No, you're just unambiguously right that I was saying it wrong my whole life.
I'm so happy.
So every dog has his day.
I'm gonna go it is 11:40 at night. I'm not going to bed. I'm gonna go celebrate. I'm gonna wake up my wife. We're gonna get some champagne. It's gonna be great.
I'm happy for you, Scott. Also, I never have to say a word wrong again, so that's good for me too.
I mean, again, like in our never-ending battle here, you are wiping the floor with me. So
Maybe we'll see. We'll see. Maybe this is the day the tide turns.
All right. Next, we have Steve Living Room, who says, my favorite character is the house. Love the weird angles, the strange vibes, the cold areas, and the sketchy stairs. The haunting that is so subtle at times we don't even know if it's really haunting. Other times is so scary as hell and freaks out the characters. Yeah, I think the location is a character, is a true statement in every single story, and I think it's never more true than in The Haunting of Hill House. And I was about to call the house she. I was going to say she is certainly a great character, but do you think Hill House is a what is the gender of Hill House?
Well, it definitely seems like the sort of ghostly presences are very feminine coded, but that could just be because it's Eleanor. It's all Eleanor.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, though. I never quite thought about the house as having like as being a character, but I like this answer a lot because the house does have a personality. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, me too.
Duran Longbeard says, my favorite character was Eleanor's sister's husband. This man has been through it. I see him through a lens of having to deal with his crazy in-laws for years, between his mother-in-law asking about when are you going to have kids every week, to his sister-in-law trying to talk to rocks she thinks fell from the sky. He doesn't even acknowledge Eleanor when she comes to ask for a car because he's so fed up with her that he can't find the will to care. He knows Eleanor is the kind of person who would wear white to someone else's wedding, and he's done. He's just done. No car for you, Eleanor. Get off my lawn.
Bravo. I love this. To take this answer seriously for a microsecond, you can kind of imagine the relative conservative joy he must have felt when his mother-in-law finally passed away. And then was very quickly told that his sister-in-law was coming to live with them, and he's like, god damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
Next, we have OK Row 2424, who says, I really liked Mrs. Montague. She is just really entertaining with how she annoys all of the other characters in the book and also does these little microaggressions against her husband, despite them both being similar. I love that we got several answers that say Mrs. Montague is their favorite character. No kidding. I actually love that.
Yes. I kind of came around on her by the end. I admit, I feel the vibe these people are latching onto, where at first Mrs. Montague seems absurd and ridiculous, and then at a certain point it's almost like she's the only sane person in this house, which I don't even know how or when that happens. But yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I do really like. We got distracted by the phylactery, but I do like what Jane said about the fact that she's the only person that seems to actually care about Eleanor, or at least is seems worried about her. Yeah,
just having like a normal human response to that situation.
Yeah.
All right, Falcon 41098 says, I absolutely love Theodora. Scott, I understand why she rubs you the wrong way, but I feel she has a pure heart beneath her flighty, happy-go-lucky exterior. Maybe it's just because I'm a massive Fish fan and lover of the Grateful Dead, but she reminds me of several friends of mine from college and from my time attending shows. She is frustrated with the way society expects her to act, and so she has made it her mission to reject all of those expectations proudly and conspicuously. Theodora is the kind of person who will do things for no reason whatsoever, and that is a person who sees the beauty buried within the mundanity of everyday life. I'm reminded of when Eleanor blurted out something like, I have red shoes, and Theo turned to her and smiled. I could almost hear her thinking, you sure do, sweet Nell, and bless your heart for it. Whether or not she truly has psychic powers or is just a natural empath, I think her behavior throughout the novel is entirely genuine and without malice. Her goodbye to Eleanor is maybe the most tragic moment in the novel.
I completely agree, Falcon, with everything you said here. Also, don't you just think that, like, sometimes the people that are just like, I am not going to do what society expects of me and make a big deal out of it are just like, dude, just kind of chill out for a minute, please. Maybe just maybe we should just take a step back and let's just go get some hamburgers or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I you know, like I said on the episodes that like I started out from the paragraph long description of Theo, just like really not vibing with the setup, but I definitely grew to like Theo a lot more throughout the book.
Yeah. I think one thing that we noticed is like our opinions on the characters changed multiple times, which is, I would say, unusual for me. And I think that's one thing that Shirley Jackson was doing on purpose is knowingly pulling you back and forth. So I think at some moments I thought Theodora was great. At some moments I thought she was being awful. I thought at some moments I thought she was doing great, and it was Eleanor who was doing awful, and et cetera, et cetera. So,
yep, all intentional, all the book doing exactly what it wanted to do on us.
Yep.
All right, so that is the answers, right? I think you pulled a list of the other ones, though, didn't you?
Yeah, just the remainders, whose answers we didn't pull fully, who didn't make the top 5 random ones. Scarlet Claret says Theo. Baby, can you dig your Sam? Says the house. Apocalypse Win 7 says Theo. And Spiridwinkle says Casper, the friendly ghost dog. So
I like that in the script you put in parentheses joke answer, as if that wasn't
just to clarify
made apparent by Casper, the friendly ghost's dog.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Yeah, just so everyone is aware of that fact.
No Eleanors. I didn't see any Eleanors either in the Reddit or in any emails we got or anything.
I do think it's fascinating. We basically got the same 3 people. We got Theo, the house, and Mrs. Montague.
Yeah.
No one gave any other. Okay. The Eleanor's brother-in-law got an honorable mention, but that also, to be fair, was kind of a joke answer.
Do you think it's like nobody wants to like pick the main character? It's like nobody's favorite Ninja Turtle is Leonardo because it's a lame one.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, probably, right, yeah.
My favorite Ninja Turtle is Leonardo.
I
just want to put that out there.
I know, Scott.
All right. Thank you everyone for answering that. And especially those of you who ridiculed my question. I'll never forget this for the rest of my life.
You have their names written down, I assume.
I do. What would be like the Shirley becomes a mortician response to people ridiculing my question? Would I become like, I guess I'd just work for Jeopardy.
Yeah. Or just like every time, like in conversation, you never actually say things. You just ask questions.
Maybe this podcast would be better if I just did that and just like everything out of my mouth was just a question and nothing else.
And then I did that too, and then it was just, but what about this? But what about this? Back and forth for 2 hours. That'd be really good. People would love that.
I think they would. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. Needs work.
All right. Next week's question, and by that I mean 2 weeks from now's question. Hard to believe, Matt. The answer to this question will be read when we are on episode 4 of The Haunting of Hill House.
That's wild.
If you can believe
yes.
it.
The question is, how do you feel about the embalming process and the idea of open caskets?
Yeah, I think Matt and I had like a long conversation about this throughout the episode, and it just felt like this is one of those ones that we should poll the audience on and see like what are the feelings on this? Like, do y'all support? Do you like open caskets? Do you want to be? Is that what you want? Do you want to be embalmed, an open casket, and the whole 9 yards, and why or why not? I think this is a really interesting thing. It's something that is it a decision that is essentially awaiting us all, right? Like every one of us is going to have to make a decision.
Yeah.
In yay or nay on some of this stuff.
Right. Or are you going to go my way and just take the serum and never die?
Yeah. A good thing about every story ever written about people that try to live forever is it always works out.
Yeah. There are a lot of those types of stories.
All right, folks, that is it for us this week. As we said, will continue next week with episode 3 of Hill House. It's It's called touch. Matt thinks he knows exactly what that means, but he could be totally wrong. We'll find out in just 7 short days.
Matt thinks he knows how to pronounce phylactery. So what the fuck does he know? Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com, on Twitter at flanaganswake19, on Instagram at doofmedia, on Blue Sky at flanaganswakepod, and on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia, which is definitely the best place to hang out and while away your days as you await the encroaching specter of death. Also, don't forget that every episode can be found on video on our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a comment letting us know what you think of the show.
Yeah, and if you want to support us through the great art of merchandising perfected by Sir George Lucas, you can head over to doofmedia.myshopify.com, and we've got brand new designs on shirts and mugs. I'm holding this is our do you have a plan to deal with Ghost Bear mug? It's an adorable. The light is really messing that up, and it's not focusing at all. All right, there's an adorable Ghost Bear on there, and you should check it out. And there's shirts and mugs and all the good stuff. So doofmedia.myshopify.com. Please check it out. The designs are great. I love them, and hope you will too. It's just some fun stuff to participate in this weird little community we've created.
The mug is a good idea because then every time you have your coffee, you contemplate, do I have a plan? No, I don't. I still need a plan. And then you think of one.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
Nope, still nothing.
Still nothing.
Yeah.
If you like Flanagan's Wake and you want to support us, and please consider donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. We should have a piping hot fresh episode of 2 From podcast where we discuss the TV show From, one episode at a time. Should have dropped
last week,
and check that out. I think that was a really good discussion. Actually, that was really fun.
Yeah. It was the season finale of season 1 of From, and we had a great conversation about that, and we think you'll really enjoy it. So that's for our patrons. Patreon, was it again? Patreon.com/doofmedia. I know this.
Yep.
But if you cannot afford to support us financially on Patreon, of course, as we always say, there are tons of ways to help us out. We are carving through Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House right now, and we want as many people to enjoy this work as we possibly can. So please share this podcast with friends or communities you know that appreciate The Haunting of Hill House and appreciate Mike Flanagan as much as we do, and maybe they'll become listeners of our show. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever they are. This week's Spotlight review comes from Michael Turn the Key, who says, Michael's got a secret. He gives us 5 stars and says, I first found Scott and Matt on Kingslingers. As a lifelong fan of those books, I found their thoughtful, methodical analysis captivating. I came late to the show and never quite caught up, and then they moved on to this show. I had no intention of following them because here's my dirty little secret. Despite loving Stephen King since before I could read, I don't like horror. And scary movies make me pee. And yet, here I am. Why? Because of this. A well-crafted, character-driven story transcends genre, media, and even that shaky, tense, damp pants chill down my spine. So when I fell in love with these guys on the latest podcast, and I've jokingly said I would listen to them discuss the specials, the special section of their favorite Chinese restaurant menu, the truth is I wouldn't listen to that because more importantly, they wouldn't podcast about that because they love what I love, a good story told with vision and intention. I'm just getting to know this Flanagan fellow, but so far I love this so much. I'm on board and over the rail and looking forward to the deep dive. Wow.
What a delightful comment.
It was.
I love that.
I think you relate to this so much too because you're not a scary movie or scary story guy either. Really.
Not something I seek out, but like the solidity of the storytelling is what keeps me here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I love scary stuff in and of itself, but I think this is, I wouldn't do a podcast just about scary movies. There's not enough there for me to, I enjoy generally just horror, but I love I love the horror that has these kind of commitment to stories and character in the way that of course Mike Flanagan and Stephen King do. So thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate that. It's a great review, and everyone who has sent those reviews in, thank you. Please keep them coming. We do appreciate them, and they do really help us.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Michael found out about our plans for the Chinese restaurant menu podcast, but
shit,
we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, do we just have to? Do you just have to 86 it now?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we're canceling that podcast. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Michael. All right, folks. Have a nice week. We will see you right back here next week for what Matt has convinced himself is the Theo episode, but we will see.
We'll see.
Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. I'm never gonna stop now. I have to keep doing it.
It's a thing now.
I have not yet got a DM that says, "Hey, that joke's not funny. Don't do that." So
that's a little insensitive. No, run it into the ground.
Mm-hmm. That's what we do. Yeah. We run stuff into the ground, and then we leave the ground and go to different ground.